Right, are you always getting mixed up between prokaryotes and eukaryotes? Don't worry, you are so not alone. This is one of those core topics that, trust me, examiners absolutely love to throw at you. So in the next few minutes, we're going to smash this topic so you never get them confused again. Ready? Let's do it.
Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First up, we'll look at what every cell has in common. Then we'll get to the main event, the one massive difference that splits all life into two groups. We'll do a deep dive into both cell types, talk about just how different they are in size, which is huge, and then I'll give you the ultimate revision slide to screenshot. Let's get going. Right, first things first. Before we dive into what makes them different, we've got to understand what makes them the same. What's the basic kit that every single cell on the planet has, from a tiny bacterium to one of the cells in your own brain?
So, you can think of these four things as the universal toolkit for life. Every single cell has them. You've got the cell membrane, which is basically the bouncer on the door, controlling what gets in and out. Then there's the cytoplasm, this jelly-like stuff where all the chemical reactions go down. You've got ribosomes. These are the tiny little factories churning out proteins. And of course, the genetic material, the DNA, the instruction manual for everything. These four things, absolutely non-negotiable for life.
All right, so we know what's the same. Now let's get to the juicy part. There is one huge, game-changing difference that splits pretty much all of life into two massive teams. So have a think about this for a sec. What's the biggest difference between something simple, like a tiny bacterium, and something complex, like, I don't know, a badger? And I'm not talking about fur or claws. It's something way, way more fundamental.
And boom, here it is. It all comes down to the nucleus. Yep, whether a cell has one or not is the massive dividing line. It's really the difference between simple and complex. It's all about where the cell keeps its precious DNA. Okay, so cells, like the ones in your body and in plants and animals and fungi, they're all called eukaryotic cells. And here's the exam definition you've got to know. Their DNA is all neatly packaged up into chromosomes and stored safely inside a proper membrane-bound nucleus. It's kind of like a high-security vault for the genetic code. The name even gives you a clue. Eu means true, and karyon means nucleus. So eukaryotic literally means true nucleus. Easy to remember, right?
So, on the other side of that line, you've got the prokaryotic cells. Think bacteria. And again, the name is a total giveaway. Pro means before. So, before nucleus. These guys were around before the nucleus was even a thing. So in a prokaryote, the DNA isn't locked away in a vault. Nope. It's just a single loop of DNA kind of floating around freely in the cytoplasm. That is the number one difference you have to get into your head. Okay, so let's take a tour inside one of these cells, shall we? We'll start with the prokaryote, the original, simpler model that's been kicking around for literally billions of years. All right, let's pop the hood on a typical bacterium. First thing we see is that single loop of chromosomal DNA just hanging out in the cytoplasm, like we said. But check these out. Plasmids. These are little extra rings of DNA. They often carry super useful genes like for antibiotic resistance. Honestly, the best way to think of them is like little genetic USB sticks that bacteria can pass around to each other. Super clever. Of course, they've still got the cytoplasm and a cell membrane. They've got ribosomes too, but they're a bit smaller. And they have a tough cell wall for protection. But key point, it's not made of cellulose. And some of them have this cool little tail called a flagellum, which basically works like a propeller to help them swim around. Okay, time for the upgrade. Let's look inside a eukaryotic cell. This one is way more complex. It's full of all these little compartments called organelles. You can just think of them as tiny organs, and each one has a very specific job to do. So the star of the show, of course, is the nucleus, which keeps the DNA safe. But we've also got mitochondria. You've probably heard of these. They're the powerhouses of the cell. It's where aerobic respiration happens to release energy. That's why your muscle cells are absolutely jam-packed with them. Now, animal cells have all that. But plant cells, they get 3 bonus features you absolutely have to know. They have a tough cell wall made of cellulose for support, a big permanent vacuole full of cell sap to keep them rigid, and of course the chloroplasts, where photosynthesis happens. Right, we've covered how complex they are, but there's another massive difference that you have got to know for your exams, and that is size. Yeah, the numbers here pretty much say it all. A prokaryotic cell is seriously tiny. We're talking about 0.2 to 2 micrometers. A eukaryotic cell, on the other hand, is an absolute giant in comparison. It can be 10, 50, even 100 times bigger. Just to put that into perspective for you, a single mitochondrion inside one of your cells can be about the same size as an entire bacterial cell. The difference is just huge. Okay, to deal with these tiny numbers, you need to be confident with the units. The main one we use is the micrometer, which has that funny μm symbol. And listen up, because this is a key conversion you just have to memorize. There are 1,000 micrometers in 1 millimeter. I can pretty much guarantee you will be asked to convert between these in your exam. So get comfortable with multiplying and dividing by 1,000. It's a classic maths and biology skill they love to test. And here's exactly why that matters. This is a top tip, straight from the examiners. They love, love, love to ask questions that link size with function. So they might get you to calculate the size of a mitochondrion, and then the next part of the question will be, so explain why a bacterium doesn't have one. And the answer is all about scale. A bacterium is just so small and simple, it doesn't need a separate little power station. All its energy-releasing reactions can just happen right there in the cytoplasm.
Whew, okay, we have covered a lot. So let's pull everything together into the one slide you've been waiting for. This right here is your exam takedown chart. Seriously. Screenshot this, write it down, stick it on your wall. This is the summary you need.
Okay, let's nail this down. Nucleus? Nope, not in prokaryotes. Yes, in eukaryotes. That's the big one. Genetic material? Prokaryotes have that single loop of DNA plus the plasmids. Eukaryotes have their DNA as chromosomes tucked away in the nucleus. Size? Prokaryotes are tiny. Eukaryotes are huge in comparison. Mitochondria? Only in eukaryotes. Prokaryotes don't have them. Ribosomes? Okay, trick question. Both have them, but they're smaller in prokaryotes. And finally, how do they divide? Prokaryotes do it by simple binary fission. Eukaryotes use the much more complicated process of mitosis. Honestly, this table is your golden ticket for any question on this topic.
And let's just finish with a cool question to think about. We know prokaryotes are ancient and simple, and we know eukaryotes are way more complex. So how did one evolve into the other? How on earth did a simple little cell end up with all these complex organelles inside it, including a nucleus? Well, it's a pretty mind-blowing story that probably involves one cell swallowing another one billions of years ago. But hey, that's a story for another day. Thanks so much for watching.